Well, I feel like an evil villain, but it's time to investigate another pickleball paddle controversy. How's it going, everyone? Rafa the Pickleball Tech Dude here, and welcome to Pickleball Mythbusters, the series where I test commonly accepted pickleball truths or rumors to see whether they're valid or deserve to be busted. Today's investigation really ties back to just one thing: the launch of Selkirk's first Gen 3 paddle. In late June, Selkirk releases the SLK era Power Series in an elongated and wide body shape, but not without controversy. Enter 11SIX24, and if you haven't heard of them, it's because you haven't watched enough of my videos, so make sure you subscribe to the channel to get more. Real talk, 11SIX24 is a paddle company that is on the rise and has been for a couple of years now. So when they came out with some, we'll call it suggestive content, indicating that Selkirk's SLK era Power Elongated is a copy of their Hurache-X power paddle, I was listening and watching very closely. Now, to be fair, if I had a nickel for every time a company came out and tried to say Selkirk copied an idea of theirs, I'd have enough money to build a court in my backyard. So all that to say, it's typically smaller companies that are really just trying to get on the map that make these accusations. 11SIX24 is well on its way to building something that I think makes any company successful in its operating space, and is something that Selkirk, Yola, and only a couple of other brands have already done in pickleball, which is building a large base of fully loyal consumers. To say that whenever 11SIX24 is talking, I'm certainly not the only one that's listening. So with that picture painted, I had a very simple question to answer. Did Selkirk knock off 11SIX24's Power Series? Let's find out. First, let's start with the facts. And by the facts, I just mean the measurable statistics. For the purposes of this video, I did focus on comparing the elongated SLK era to the Hurache-X Power only, but it's important to note that the Era series does have a wide body shape and that there are two other shapes available in the Power series from 11SIX24, and I'll come back to that at the end of the video. The 11SIX24 Hurache-X Power retails for $170, and with discount code RAFA comes out to under $155. Versus the SLK Era Elongated retails for $200, and with my code INF-RAFA, you get a credit to Selkirk's store, which if you don't plan on using Selkirk paddles for the foreseeable future, it's really hard to consider that a discount. So that makes the Hurache-X significantly cheaper. However, the Hurache-X is currently only USAP approved and carries a warranty of 6 months, versus the SLK Era, which is USAP approved and has provisional UPAA approval and carries a warranty of 1 year. Here are the full specs of both paddles, and one thing that should stick out to you right away is that they aren't super different between the two. When it comes down to weights, static, swing weight, and twist weight are all very similar between the two paddles. They also have very similar levels of spin, and when it comes to power and pop, the Hurache-X does have the edge, but by a very minimal amount. And when it comes to design and construction of the paddles, they again are very similar. These are both elongated arrow curve top paddles, but the main difference is that the Selkirk Era handle is a 1/4 inch shorter, but has a thinner neck taper, which still makes the two-handed backhands very accessible. Holding the paddles up side by side, you can see that the shapes are very similar, but not exactly the same. And you can say the same thing about the construction internally as well. These are both Gen 3 constructed floating core paddles, meaning that they have 16mm polypropylene cores surrounded completely by softer foam. The only two real differences I really detect here are that the Hurache-X uses a fiberglass layer in between two carbon fiber sheets in the face, whereas the SLK Era does not. And the SLK Era appears to be using a slightly less dense foam in its floating core perimeter. But I only determine these differences by actually deconstructing the paddles themselves. So now there's really only one other way to discern any real differences between the two paddles, and that's to actually get out on the court with them and see their playability. So I'm going to go play a little bit of Dallas Pickleball Club Monday Night Advanced League, and I'm going to come back with some thoughts. Jump scare. I am back from league. I didn't play great tonight. I am nursing a little bit of a bum left knee, but that aside, I did come to a conclusion of the main playability difference between the two paddles, and it really isn't much. Here's what it really boils down to for me. Every paddle, when you're talking about how it feels, how the ball comes off the face, has two different scales. On one side, you have paddles that feel very responsive, you know exactly where the ball is going, to paddles that are very muted. Think of a carbon true foam where you really don't feel the ball too much. And then on the other side, you have paddles that feel very plush and really pocket the ball, all the way to paddles that feel very tingy, where it doesn't really pocket the ball much at all. On this side, both paddles do feel much more plush than they do tingy. That's purely based on the construction. It is what I've come to expect from paddles that are constructed with floating cores. It's one of the main reasons they are constructed as such. They aren't extremely durable, but they do pocket the ball, and the ball dwells on the face very nicely. Both of these paddles by design have very nice and forgiving sweet spots. So what's most important to me with a paddle like this, where almost every ball is going to feel really good off the face, is being able to accurately predict if the ball is going where you think it will. So this is where the main difference lies for me, is when we're talking responsive versus muted. And I do think we have, in my opinion, an SLK era paddle that leans responsive and therefore is a little bit easier to control than the Hurache-X, which does provide a more muted experience. So taking into account specs that do vary to a somewhat significant degree, shapes that aren't exactly the same, and finally, playable on-court experiences that do feel different enough for the average player to discern, I'm confident in saying that the proposition that the SLK era is just a Hurache-X knockoff is busted. And so that's really that. What I enjoyed most about making this video was that I'm often asked to compare two paddles that are very different. But these two paddles were absolutely perfect and ripe for comparison because it is down to your personal preference that would make a decision between the two. Do you prefer an on-court experience like with the SLK era, where you are making slight sacrifices to a feeling of plushness or premiumness and gaining responsiveness and ability to control balls off the face? Or do you prefer the Hurache-X experience, which is a little bit more muted, leading to a sensation of more plushness and more premium experience, but you are losing some of that ball feel that is necessary to make certain shots? And to take it a step further, let's say you are firmly in the SLK era camp after that question. Is that plus 6 months longer on the warranty enough to warrant a $45 price difference? Right now, both of these paddles are firmly in my top 5 Gen 3s that I've hit in 2025. And for me personally, if price wasn't a factor, I would go SLK era. However, price is always a factor. So when I think personally about a $45 difference and the fact that neither of these paddles are going to be significantly more durable than the other, and honestly durable in general, especially compared to other Gen 4s that have been released, it's really easy to think about how larger companies like Selkirk are doing much better in terms of customer service, especially with response times, but nothing is going to match the response time and attention and care that you are going to get from a smaller company like 11SIX24. So I think that if I was going to need my warranty, which you almost certainly will, especially if you're a very frequent pickleball player, I would rather have the 11SIX24 experience where I'm going to get my paddle warrantied a lot faster. Not to mention that the vapor shape still exists for 11SIX24, which I think subjectively is a better performing paddle than either of these. And I would love to see Selkirk potentially add a hybrid to the Era lineup in order to compete, as long as it's not a substantially similar shaped paddle. Otherwise, I'm going to have to make a part 2 to this video. That's just how I personally would think about it, but if you made it here to the end of the video, thank you so much for watching and for your support. Remember to like, subscribe, and comment down below if you've hit any of these paddles or what your preference would be just based on this video. But with all that said, I hope you all stay happy and healthy, and of course, out on the courts. Until the next one. Peace.